Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we're going to take a look at the Pisces new moon that's taking place on the 18th or 19th of March of 2026, depending on where you are on the planet. This is our first lunation after eclipse season, and it's also very late in the degrees of Pisces, but also very late in the degrees of the zodiac before we hit the 0 point of Aries and start a new cycle. So this is ushering in what's known as the Aries ingress, which is the spring equinox. It's also a kind of world reset point that we go through every year, but which is especially poignant this year, given the fact that we just had the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. So we'll look at this kind of on a technical level. We'll look at what we can expect in the energy collectively, what we should be doing with this moon. We'll look at it on a global level, what we can expect to play out politically, and then we'll take it through sign by sign and look at where this is in our own charts. So as you can see, there's quite a bit going on during this time, during this new moon. We have the new moon itself is closely sextile to Uranus. So this is speaking to a willingness to shift gears, to cut losses in order to find a sense of true harmony and comfort. There's a need to look at and approach our relationships with people and with different aspects of our lives differently. How do we approach things? This new moon is also ruled by Jupiter, which is currently just past its station point. It's just starting to gain some speed after having gone forward into Cancer last year, and then it turned retrograde. It stopped at 15 degrees and 5 minutes of Cancer. And now it's starting to push forward, but it's still very slow. It's still at that pivot point. So that is especially loud and poignant. And it's in and of itself bringing up these notions of what's really important to us, what's really meaningful to us. What do we really care about? What are we willing to nurture and put our time, our effort, and our energy into? It's also very active during this time. So as you'll see, we have two different, very significant aspects to it. We have perfecting, in fact, just earlier in the day than the new moon, the square between Venus in Aries and this Jupiter in Cancer. So this is really raising the passions. It's bringing up these questions about what do I truly want? What do I truly desire? How do I go about creating that or drawing that in? It's quite visionary in what it wants, and it's very willing to go after that and to try to finesse situations in order to get them to go in your direction. But there may be a bit of friction there as well about, is what you desire in alignment with what is truly meaningful to you in life? These bigger questions are very likely to be coming up during this period of time for reasons that I will get into in a moment as well. But we also then have this trine between Mars, which is applying to Jupiter here as well. So this is a friendly relationship. These two are in agreement. It's more along the lines of Jupiter being very, very favorable to this Mars. Mars is in the house of Jupiter, with Jupiter being the traditional ruler of Pisces. So Jupiter is very favorably disposed to the action that we take based on our beliefs. It's going to affirm that. So if we set things in motion, if we put some energy toward big goals that do deeply feel aligned to us, that feel like this could be my be all and end all, right? That is very likely to go over well during this time. It's also likely to be incredibly motivating with that square to Venus. So we have the motivation, we have the energy, we have the very strong approval of Jupiter in this process. But there's these lingering questions here about what is meaningful. What do we believe in at this point? We've just been through the ringer on this question over the past couple of years, and then especially in this past month with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. These two have been in Pisces for a long time, so they've been kind of duking it out and wearing each other down in terms of what we feel like we can really rely on and believe in the world. What are our boundaries? What are we willing to put up with? What are we not? What are we willing to put ourselves out for? Like, what are we willing to sacrifice ourselves for? So we've had these questions kind of in the background, needing to be sorted out, needing to be dealt with. And now what's interesting is we also have this conjunction between Mercury which just ruled the lunation just before this one, which was the full moon, the lunar eclipse in Virgo. This Mercury retrograde ruled that lunation, and that was a very weird one. Somewhat uncomfortable, did bring up these notions of belief and what's true and what's not. And just looking at the media, a lot of people had a lot of trouble with the truth or even getting their story straight, right? So we saw that play out big time. And it has been inviting us to go back, look over our beliefs, our ideas, and interrogate them a little bit. Look for the fault lines in those. What else has happened with this Mercury retrograde is that it came out and it crossed that north node, and then it turned retrograde, and it is actually just about to station, like a day or two later after this new moon. It's going to station right next to that north node as well. And then it's going to cross it again. So it's kind of holding up right next to it, which is putting many exclamation points on that station of Mercury. Many. And it's underlining it and it's bolding it and everything. So what the North Node does is it brings periods of time together. So we can wind up dealing with fallout or consequences from things that we have done, or in the case of Mercury, said or believed or thought even, that we may have even forgotten about, and it winds up coming up again. Now that can be for worse, like bad consequences. It can also be something paying off, something kind that we said, finding out, oh, it had a wonderful impact on someone. At times we can be affirmed for having kind of gone out on a limb and believed someone or dug into someone else's beliefs that maybe we didn't naturally understand, but we felt the need to put ourselves out to make that sacrifice of our time and our energy toward the end of understanding what other people believe as well, or getting an outside perspective, a more universal perspective, with that Mercury being very sensitive to the whole gamut, the whole range of possible ideas. But on the other hand, we may have also believed some things that weren't completely true. And this would be a time where we would run into some of those things. Additionally, Mercury becomes very significant in terms of what we're thinking, saying, believing right now for the future as well, and in ways that are not at all apparent right now. So similar to what I said about like things we may have forgotten that we said could wind up coming up again. This can be things that are easily forgotten that we're saying now that have a big consequence or a big impact on the future as well. So we get into these weird kind of time warp situations where the past and the future seem to fold into the present. Now, Mercury crosses the North Node every year, but it very rarely stations right on it, right? So this is going to be very interesting, I think, on a global level, but also on a personal level. What do we believe about the world and what's possible, about humanity, about our role within the world, about what we're capable of, about what our options are? Do we think of that as something scary? For one thing, some of the imagery that's associated with the North Node is of like the dragon's head. And so we may find that a lot of people do have these like fearful beliefs that are coming through during this period of time as well. And that may be quite significant in terms of how events wind up unfolding too. There may even be this sense of even delusion about what we're capable of. So we want to be really checking in big time in this period of time about what we believe. And this new moon is reinforcing the heck out of that. So generally speaking, when it comes to the decan, the third decan of Pisces, the last decan of the zodiac, as well as this area of the sky and its reputation, this is a really all or nothing kind of a new moon. Like I said, it's the second to the last degree of the zodiac. So this is a bit backward looking, but it's cleaning that out. It's setting us up for the spring equinox, which again is about a day or two later. So asking ourselves, what is it that we deeply, truly believe in? What are the hills that we're willing to die on, right? What is it where are our lines that we're willing to defend and fight for? What are we willing to make a sacrifice for? What is truly ideal for us? Looking back over how we have compromised on that, and then in our attempt to move forward with this new moon, how are we going to take those ideals and infuse them much more deeply into our lives. Are we going to live them? Are we going to fight for them? Are we going to make sacrifices to those ends? So a couple other things that I want to point out about the nature of the energy of this time, this broader time. I'm going to cover it in the next video, I'm pretty sure. But we do also have this applying sextile that is getting closer between Saturn in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius. We're only going to get one of these sextiles to each other, so Saturn's not going to retrograde over this area again. This is like a one and done opening sextile between Saturn and Pluto. I don't want to mention it, but this is our first aspect between Saturn and Pluto since their conjunction. Now, their conjunction was not pretty. That was COVID. That was like in early 2020 or so. So that wasn't fun. And we generally don't like the hard aspects between Saturn and Pluto. It tends to bring up issues of control and autonomy and freedom and problems and pestilence in that period of time. It's been associated with like plagues and things like this. Now, with the sextile, though, what we're still dealing with is these kind of overlapping notions of Saturn and Pluto, which are power, control, authority, prerogative. Who has the right to do X, Y, Z, and who has the power, regardless of right, to do X, Y, Z. Saturn is much more on the, do you have the right? Do you have the prerogative? Did you get that paper signed? You know? And Pluto's just going to kind of do whatever it's able to do and exercise whatever power it's able to exercise. It's not going to look for permission. So some power games, some power dynamics are probably going to be really significant throughout this kind of late March timeframe. Those two perfect, if I'm remembering correctly, on the 30th of March. That's going to be kind of an underlying thing. I'm not the most fond of it, but I do want to say a sextile is a lot lighter of an aspect, let's say, than a conjunction. So this isn't like COVID 2.0 necessarily, but it is pretty authoritative, if not like authoritarian or kind of domineering, or trying to control other people, trying to control institutions, like trying to control the way that the world works, kind of a thing. And so we could see this in people who are inclined toward that in our own personal lives, of this overbearing kind of nature. So that is something to keep in mind. We'll probably see a bit more of that during this time than usual, but certainly on the global stage, we're likely to see that. Additionally, this is going to be a bit later, and it's something that I'm going to talk about in the coming videos and so forth. But since, I want to say it's like 2003, I recently heard Austin Coppock point this out. And it's something that we don't often think about, but it was in the early 2000s that we had Uranus move into Pisces. So we had an outer planet there for a long time. It moved out of Pisces, and then pretty much immediately Neptune moved into Pisces. For the last several years, we have had, since 2023, we've had Saturn there with Neptune as well. And then last year, we had the North Node join in on the party. And it's just been a big, big, big Pisces party for, what is that, like 20 some years at this point, over 20 years. We're just about to get the sun to move on. And then that's going to be followed by Mars. And I want to say that's going to be right around the March, April switchover. And then in mid-April, we're going to get Mercury catching up with that and also moving out of Pisces. And all we're going to be left with then for a few months is going to be the North Node in Pisces. That's going to move on in the summer. And then for the first time in recent friggin' memory, we're going to have Pisces cleared out. And we're not going to be dealing with that energy so much anymore. This should ground things quite a bit. There's been a lot to do with belief and all of the potentially secretive or manipulative aspects of belief, the challenges of belief, the challenges to our own ideals as well over, these many years, these couple decades. And we finally have that area quieting down. So I'm going to keep speaking to that the more that I let that idea kind of percolate in my own mind as to what that's going to look like for after so long not have planets in Pisces for some time. But I wanted to point that out as well, because this is, again, it's a new moon. It's kicking us off, but it is also really looking at so much time before and what has led us to this moment. So it's a real checkpoint that we're dealing with. One thing that I think could be a bit of an edge to this new moon is that the all or nothing aspect of it could go overboard for sure. These aspects to the ruler of this new moon, this Jupiter here, these are going to encourage going a bit overboard, be it a trine to Mars, be it a square to Venus. Jupiter is starting to get the wheels going forward as well. We're just about to get Mercury stationing to go direct again, and then at that point, none of the planets will be retrograde. The nodal axis is always retrograde, more or less. We're about to get all of this Aries energy and so forth. So it's going to feel like we're really on the cusp of something, and that we're quite excited about that. We're quite excited about going forward. And our ideals are really hyped up in this moment as well. So we could go a bit overboard. Now, is that a problem? In some cases, naturally, right? But Saturn having been in Pisces, in addition to Neptune for the past few years, it's been difficult to get excited about things. That's what Pisces does. It's always idealistic about stuff. It's always optimistic, and especially that third decan of Pisces where it's like, no, we're just going to go all in on whatever we're excited about, right? Saturn's been primarily there for the past year, kind of putting a wet blanket on that. So I would expect for this kind of passionate idealism that has been tempered in recent years to feel like it's surging forth. So that I think is much more beautiful than potentially harmful, but maybe check in a bit. If you feel like you are uncharacteristically hyped about something, maybe give yourself a moment, try and ground yourself and think that through before you take actions that you can't take back. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a lot of people signing up to volunteer, to get involved in community works, to a lot of people starting up creative projects or like side hustles, or deciding that they're going to go all in on, what was a side hustle, or try to be more independent, try to really follow their passions and their beliefs and their ideals more so in their everyday life. So it's going to be driving a lot of that excitement, that idealism, and that passion up. And there is a bit of a stubbornness to it as well. Now, there is also this kind of mythic aspect of Pisces too, where it does want to live within a mythical hero story, right? It does want to live in this world, this land, this realm of archetypes, to see its life as the hero's journey. So when we get into these all or nothing moments, it can really kick us into that mode of, this is my role, this is my position, this is my calling in life. And then refusing to compromise, refusing to budge on that, refusing to do any sort of half measures and going all in. So that can lead to fantastic breakthroughs. But again, we just want to kind of check ourselves on this a bit. Rely on intuition, rely on those gut feelings. I know that there can be a real fine line between what a gut instinct and excitement and anxiety feel like. They feel pretty similar. So again, just kind of taking your time with things a bit more than this new moon is going to be encouraging, which is going to be, let's do it now. Let's not hesitate. We could also see in terms of communication, those that we are communicating with, how we're communicating with people, what we are talking about, what we're thinking about, shifting in a pretty dramatic way in this time as well. So we may find that there are these thoughts that come through intuitively that we can't get rid of. Those, I would say, are probably quite intuitive and being pushed from maybe beyond the veil or from the ether, or that could even be the collective unconscious calling for something to be done about whatever this is that you keep mulling over, that keeps kind of circling around in your thoughts. So I would check in on those things. I wouldn't gaslight yourself out of following some of those threads and thinking about, what is it that I want to do about this thought that keeps coming up for me? The reason I say that is this very, very, very slow retrograde Mercury here. It's just about to change directions. So it's just about to make a big, like, kind of seismic shift, that being in the realm of thought, idea, belief, and communication. There's also a huge potential here for self-sacrifice. So especially along the lines of volunteering that I was mentioning, but even just out of compassion for people, feeling your heartstrings tugged upon by all manner of different causes or people who need help, people who need guidance. So we're going to be strongly motivated along those lines as well. So in terms of shedding outdated beliefs, that is, again, that kind of check-in point that we're getting to here. What has felt right? I won't even say like what has served you, because that's not ultimately what this new moon is about. It's about what's really meaningful. It's not about serving ourselves. It's about serving some sense of a greater cause or a greater belief. When we're doing that, typically we have that strong reinforcement on a spiritual level of feeling really aligned, feeling really fulfilled and satisfied. So what beliefs have reinforced that in your life? What beliefs have led you into those moments of feeling just deeply satisfied? And what haven't? Which ones haven't? Maybe materialism or consumerism or things like that. This is not the most, this is barely at all materialistic. This is really much more deep and much more meaningful than all of that. What's fascinating too about the third decan of Pisces is that when you get this right, when you really do go all in on the right thing and you follow that thread and you do so without doubt, not because you're forcing it, but because you truly do believe in what you're going after and what you're putting your energy into. This decan is associated with the 10 of Cups. And so it's that kind of happily ever after energy of going after what you really want, regardless of the perceived cost. And refusing to compromise on your values and your sense of right and wrong. So there's a lot of benefit to be had in this place. It is highly motivated, and I think that we can do a lot of good with it. Now, one thing I would say is that this might encourage a lot of people to like, I'm going to up and quit my job and do this thing that I've always believed in. That's where I would maybe say, check in, give it a moment, let this play out. See if there is potentially maybe not a half measure, but maybe like a 75% measure that you can do to maintain a sense of safety, stability underneath you as you are leaning much more and more and more into your beliefs and your values. This is something that's going to be, I think, just very important for us going forward in the coming few years. There's going to be such an upheaval of all that we have defaulted to, all that we just kind of give over our sense of what we're doing with ourselves and with our lives, how society functions. We've handed that over for so long, and that's not really going to cut it in the coming few years. So on a personal level and on a collective level and on a collective unconscious level, there's going to be a need to coalesce new systems of belief, new narratives, new motivating factors, other than just the status quo, because the status quo isn't going to be there to continue to motivate us. So we really need to decide, like, what direction do we want this to go in? And this new moon really speaks to me of that moment as well. So now, on a global level, I think that we can already see how this might be a bit of a potential problem. Now, it can also guide people's hands, maybe in a pretty fascinatingly, parently, spiritually guided kind of a way. Basically, there may be some breakthroughs that are inherent to this whole process, these turning points that seem divinely orchestrated. And we may find ourselves people that have a huge impact on how, you know, the world is moving, may seem to be moved by some greater force, because we may see some things that don't quite make sense. That's what Pisces is really good at, is making things happen in ways that can't be evidenced as to how that happened, right? And again, especially in these later degrees of Pisces, I think there's going to be these moments as well of information coming out about the past, about what people have done, about what different actors have done, information that also winds up having a huge impact in terms of how things wind up playing out during this period of time that wind up causing either an increase or a decrease in the belief in these people, these actors, these institutions, etc. Additionally, as I mentioned, I won't go super into it because I kind of just talked about it, but the sextile between Saturn and Pluto is going to be complicated on a global level. It's going to really be calling into question what is the new authority that is being established. Is it pure? Is it corrupted? Is it going to hold up against that which is irreverent in terms of the utilization of power? This is one of the big complications that I keep harping on about this notion of might makes right, is we can assume that we know who is most mighty, but we don't really know that. And eventually, there's always someone who is mightier. This is how these things go. So how are our institutions, our global institutions, our global narratives about how the world functions, how is that going to be holding up during this time? There's going to be a lot of power plays, and there's going to be a lot of those institutions needing to respond to situations that are kind of outside of their control. We'll talk about that more, though, I think in the next video. But I think that we can see with a war that has started, a conflict that has started, a realignment of global powers that has been instituted, which the major actors in play are calling upon like eschatological arguments for that this notion of sacrifice for belief, or this all or nothing, going all in, making the ultimate sacrifice for a sense of belief, could be problematic, could be utilized to the ends of people who are in a position of power, etc., and that these arguments would be very resonant during this time. So I think that this is something that we kind of want to keep in mind as well, is that people could be making these really huge, overarching, like civilizational level, ideological arguments trying to get people revved up. I think there's a question as to whether a lot of the people making those kinds of arguments actually believe those things, or whether they know that this is, something that is going to help them out. So apply that to whatever side of whatever situation you were in alignment with or not in alignment with. But there is in this energy a real going all in, all or nothing, brinksmanship, pushing. I think I misspelled that, brinksmanship. So kind of playing chicken. There could be a lot of escalation here, especially with that trine between Mars and Jupiter. Leadership is also likely to be very, very, very stubborn and unwilling to make compromises. The stars around this area are strongly associated with transportation problems as well. So we've been already seeing some of that, certainly in the Strait of Hormuz. We may see that in other places as well, but I would only expect for that to increase around the time of this new moon as well. And then as Mars moves through this area a little bit later too. We could also see sudden shifts in policy and legislation like that are quite loud, that are quite like taking us off guard, basically. So part of the reason for that is this conjunction of that stationing Mercury with the North Node having a huge impact. We do also see the sun in a sextile to Uranus saying like, well, maybe if I just like quickly change gears here, then this will wind up helping. So there's this willingness to take a different tack, to take a different course. And yet there's this kind of stubbornness about that. There's a refusal to compromise with that. So is that an off-ramp, or is that a change in how someone is approaching the situation? A lot of calls to sacrifice for ideals, as I've mentioned. I think that that's going to be complicated. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I know that different people have different viewpoints about that. Another interesting thing about the stars that are in the area of this new moon is that they are associated with space travel as well. So we may see some breakthroughs along those lines, or issues with satellites, issues with space travel coming into the equation here. Those stars are also associated with extreme weather, so that could become another issue. Now, this is all speaking to this complete systemic reset that we see playing out, and we see coming up to kind of a cusp moment And it's fascinating to me that just on the other side of this very dramatic, very passionate new moon, that we have that Aries ingress. That Aries ingress is going to feature both the moon and the sun joining Saturn and Neptune and Venus in Aries. And so once we're pretty much on that course, I don't see us getting off of the course that we're on around the time of the spring equinox for some time to come. It's definitely going to be a year of a lot of brinksmanship, not just between different actors, but also like on a global stage, like different states, but also within. So I think that there's going to be a lot of frustration, a lot of people being really active about the way that they think that things should be going, or the problems that they are perceiving in the world. So even if we do somehow wind up finding an off-ramp with this conflict, I do want to just kind of point out, it's going to be a year of that kind of energy. So again, this stubborn refusal to compromise energy is sticking with us, basically. And what's interesting about the moment of this new moon in that broader context is I think that if there's any sort of continued inability to really explain to people why we need to make these sacrifices, I don't think that that's going to fly anymore. So I think that we're kind of getting to the end of that game. I think we start to see a lot of pushback if there isn't an off-ramp to the situation that we're in, especially in the US, that there's going to have to be an explanation. Otherwise, in addition to this external conflict, I think we start to see a lot of people getting really active and frustrated within the country as well, and starting to really push back on that level. So it's going to be, I think, interesting to see. I think that we're certainly getting our mojo back. We definitely can't argue that that energy, that tenacity that I think has been lacking in recent years, with a little bit of an exception of last year, really even recent decades. This sense of just needing to go through the motions, just needing to get from week to week. That's definitely over. But given how things are looking here, I will just say, if we can have some really great grounding exercises on a personal level to chill ourselves out, if we can have some rules, some boundaries in place about when we're tuning out and when we're taking care of ourselves, and maybe even the intentional activity within our communities, because when you look online, people look really rough. The world looks super rough. You know, when you get more involved in your community, when you get more active, there can be a lot of reinforcement of compassion, and that can be very, very, very heartening. So I can only recommend that. And that is also the highest form of the energy that we're going to see over the coming year, really reinforced in this moment as well. That is the highest activation of all of this, is coming back together. So yeah, with that said, I hope this new moon is very impassioning, very inspiring to everyone. To be perfectly honest, I know I said a bunch of stuff that's kind of complicated there. I'm looking forward to this one. I think that it is a lot of what we need. So I hope that we're all able to find a way to enjoy it and to get a lot out of it. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really greatly appreciate it. If you don't mind giving the video a like or hype, really greatly appreciate that as well. It helps to spread the video around. Consider sticking around by subscribing for future videos where we go through various transits and look at how that's going to be impacting the energy and the globe and us personally. There's also information in the description box below about personal readings, if that's of interest to you, as well as membership perks, including weekly horoscopes where I go through and delineate all of the alignments on a collective and a global level, monthly courses, discounts on readings, free reading drawings, etc. So do check that out. And thank you so much to the members of this channel for your support. So thank you so much to Angel Niblock, JJ, Michelle Howell, Deborah Kealevitt, Jody, Anne Marie, C. Rezer, Peace Out, Aya, Rachel Windholtz, Lynn Newman, Long T. Standing, the Nelson Cat Maya, Connie DiMartino, Dolly Geezy, Mango JT, B Love, Starlingly True, Psyche Lloyd, Noah, Maria Cyril Hyro, Aquarian Antiquarian, Susan Martin, Chad W, Jonathan Mason, Adrian K, SP, Teresa Jones, Sherry Leas, Nioke Beam, Farts and Chuckles, Create, Gail's Tarot and Astrology, Talita McKenzie, K from NH, Pitar Music, Nancy Imhoff, Peta Carlin, Sarah MCap, Angela Lazaire, King Court Comics, Jane Bevan, Helena Fisher, Tina Reynolds, Sacred Alpaca, Natasha P., Indy Loon, Linda Skull, Maharnusha Mary, Ellen McCormick Martins, Black Sheep, Pink Unicorn, Someone77, Attunement Tarot, Cookerzilla, Joshua Owen, J.A., Carrie Affronti, Mike, Lynn Ching, Kiska Kuznetsova, Linda Osborne, Denise Gull, Many Stars, E.F., Zoe, Plamena Molinova, The Muslim Researcher, Dante Hill, Cameron, Larissa F., Marlo Murphy, Allison Arthurson, Janelle S., Janet McCann, Gamine, CPT Alpha 12, Mina Dobras, NG, Rebecca Cortez, Ricky Dandridge, Novocaine, Brandy Williams, Allison Elliott, Mason HKW, Adia Freya Willow Raven, Psychics and Mediums, M.A., Nat Catnip, Shane V., Jesse, Aaron Paterson, Shell Hawkins, Amanda Emmons, This Is It, My Friend, Tracy Gerdine, Sabrina Simon, J.L., Grounded Fire, Shadow and Soul Revolution, Esther Swan, Victoria Gordon, Lizzie Willow, Emily Zoe, Scarlett Sparks, Patricia Cogley, Alex T., Kim Spina, Rachel Y., Ruby Payne, Valerie Hamilton, Gabriel Pages, Sunshine, Am Potate, Rebecca Fusetti, Anna Jordan, Roxette De La Cruz, I Hate 1988, Sylvia C., Jennifer Arena, Madcap Vlogs, Veronica Dubiel, Linda McCallum, Jenny Tron, B., Desiree Dembski Hamlin, Maria Paula Major, Self Carey, Katie Scarlett, Sandra Anderson, Marlena Kimber, Corvus Cornix, The Electric Cheese Productions, Giselle Christine, Danny Baneyful, Stacy Starkey, Al Cameron, Casey Rusma, Petra S., Kelly Zarsa, Peace Yarn and Paper, Mused Wellness, Padme Moonflower, Holobia One of Many, Monique Bird, Pample Granite, Deb Wrights, Melissa Campbell, Susanna, Jenna Martindale, Charles Oganike, Siobhan, Big Sky 25, I Am Just Me, RG, Maria Brandusa, Coleman, Follow the Moon and Grab the Stars, Candace Harris, Angela C., Amanda, Rusina Velev, Belen Valadares, Almut Reinhold, Karen Cheris, Amy Odom, Jenna Chatton, Sophia M., Still Ripples Coaching, Clodo Yudi, Penny C., Coco, Catherine Terra, Lisa Cummings, Nikhil, Dortia Cogman, Melissa Sinclair, Finau Tutone, Jessie Gret, Sharif Artuk, Linda Yavin, Emra Ogman, Mel, Daryl Fang, That Witch Danny Psychic Tarot, Kate Vaughn, Bucky, Eye of Modoc, Jess Morris, Femke Lemberg, The Crabby Cancer, Bubba 444, Tea with Lilith, G, J, Glenn Robert Genova, Iris Ho, Ronick M. West, Nika Ritter, L. Rude, Mardulia, Rich Casey, and Nikita Sharma. Thank you all so much for your support. Much love to you. And without any further ado, let's get into the sign by sign. All right, so for Aries, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your 12th house. And this is a place of your subconscious. This is a place of things that are a little bit outside of your control, even sometimes outside of your awareness. But we also find that dreams and spiritual experiences and things like this, solitude, working on your own, working behind the scenes, this is where a lot of that winds up taking place and showing up. So we're likely to see some of those themes be reinforced by this new moon. But I will also say that this is a pretty passionate kind of a new moon, especially for a Pisces one. And so I would imagine that there's going to be, with Saturn and Neptune having just come out of this house recently in recent months, this area is starting to get cleared out, but we have this big new moon that's taking place right in these last degrees of the sign. And so it may feel like you're purging a lot of old emotions, a lot of old like versions of yourself, versions of your sense of identity or your sense of self with the sun and moon coming together so late in this sign. So again, like a subconscious purging and just not feeling as attached to different aspects of yourself that, again, they feel like they go back pretty far with this being really late in Pisces. So if you are taking some time to yourself, you may want to think about these maybe emotions of nostalgia or looking back that wind up coming up. You may find that quite literally your past feels like it's coming up. We also have a Mercury retrograde in this house. And just looking through that, but gently releasing, gently saying, if this isn't really serving me, maybe I can just kind of let it go. Let the sun move into your first house, let the moon move into your first house, and leave that in the past. You may even find that this winds up coming up in your dream space. So the 12th house is where we tend to dream. When you get significant transits coming through this place, you may find that there are a lot of dreams that you're having that either, again, seem to be speaking to what's going on for you on a subconscious level, so on a level of psyche, or somewhat prophetic or even divinatory kinds of dreams that you're having, which seem to clarify things that are coming up for you. But you may even just find that you're processing a lot of emotion in your dream space. So it may be very well worth thinking about that, planning for that. If dreams are something that, especially the significant ones, you want to write down, you may want to prepare yourself for that before you go to sleep, especially right around this new moon. So right around, say, maybe the 15th through the 20th, because you're likely to get some really fascinating messages and insights from those dreams as well. You know, you also, the nodal axis, this isn't an eclipse, but when you get a new moon or a full moon that's very, very close to the north node here, the south node is over here, that becomes an eclipse, and the nodal axis itself also winds up bringing up notions of things that haven't happened yet or things that happened in the past being brought into the present moment and kind of being resolved in that moment in a way, or seeds being planted. So again, looking at the past, looking at the future, there's this kind of time warp moment that's happening for you in the subconscious. And when you are in solitude, when you're in quietude, you may even want to focus on this and try to bring this up, like through meditation or through just focusing on either a specific concern or just opening your mind to allow the information to flow through. You may find as well that you're just very intuitive and connected during this time, and know how to gently heal yourself through that rest, through relaxation, through solitude, and especially quietude, not just being on our own and on our phones, which I do way too much, but, you know, putting the phone aside, maybe not having screens, maybe just having music like we used to do back in the day, right? Just relaxing, maybe in your garden or something, and allow for your mind to just process any feelings, any thoughts, any concerns on its own, and you're likely to get a lot more impact or effect from that. Now, finally, as well, beyond all of that, this can also be pretty motivating. You do also have Mars in the mix here as well. So this can have you working behind the scenes and doing that very effectively. So maybe kicking off a passion project, kicking off some creative effort, working creatively and passionately behind the scenes, where maybe you have your phone again on do not disturb or something, and you're just able to get into the flow. I would really recommend, if that's something that you've been trying to do or that feels like it keeps getting interrupted, around the time of this new moon, you should be able to just get right into that flow state pretty easily. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Aries. So it should be pretty fascinating. I hope that it is pleasant. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Taurus, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your 11th house. And your 11th house has to do with your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, as well as the social groups, the social circles that you run in, especially those that kind of give you a leg up or build up your profile. So colleagues, the community groups that you belong to, helpful friends, etc. So there's likely to be a lot of focus in this area during this period of time when it comes to your social life, some shifts or changes within your social circles. This could be a little bit of drama for sure. This could be a lot of people being not very compromising with each other or kind of insisting on their way of doing things. So we could see a lot of heightened emotion within that area for you. And you may need to step in, you may need to help out with that or smooth some of that over and show some real like leadership qualities when it comes to that. You may even just be thrust into a leadership position within social settings, generally speaking. In that case, likely due to just kind of like a social sensitivity to people, an understanding of social graces and compassion for people, understanding people. Now, you may also find yourself kind of moving on from or disconnecting from, deciding that you don't want to pour your energy or effort or time into some social connections or social groups as well, especially if you feel like you're just not aligned anymore, like you don't feel passionate about, whatever those connections are or whatever they were built around. But on the other hand, that which you do still feel very motivated by, this could wind up kicking off some connections within groups. So again, if it comes to like social causes that you really believe in, this could be you going out of your way to volunteer, to connect with people, to try to link up, to try to have some specific kind of an effect that you would like to see in the world or in your community. But beyond social ideals, this is also, like I said, your own hopes and dreams and aspirations. What are you wanting in your life? What role do you want to play? What kind of lifestyle do you want? What options do you want to have in your life? And what do you want to be known for? So this is the area of the sky that kind of climbs or pushes toward those goals. And you may find that you are less willing to compromise on those matters as well. So specifically when it comes to passion projects or putting yourself out there for specific roles or positions, networking with people, asking for someone to put in a good word for you, anything that kind of greases the wheels to get you into a position that you're seeking to be in, or to get you into an ability basically to have the impact that you're wanting to have, or to fulfill a sense of purpose that feels very aligned to you. Now, this may also all kind of go hand in hand where there's this culmination point around certain goals or aspirations where you're achieving something and therefore moving on from that and saying, what's next? Because there's this kind of excitement about following through, maintaining your momentum, stacking wins upon wins, right? So depending on where you're at with all of this, if it feels like you've had to make some compromises with Saturn in this area around your goals, Saturn having been here since like 2023, you've probably been putting a lot of effort into these things over the past couple of years, and yet you may have felt like you weren't really in an unfettered kind of a way calling the shots for yourself. You may have felt somehow bound to certain goals or to certain groups or things like this. And this is about really throwing off the shackles, looking at the big picture. What have I accomplished? Let me feel a sense of pride in that. And then where do I want to go from here? And how can I start to kick that off? You're likely to find that some aspect of this is either, again, going to be very tied in with social causes or compassionate causes for you. I'm also keeping in mind like the sun and the moon are about to hop into your 12th house. Or you could find that some of these new hopes and dreams and aspirations that you're pursuing, that you're going to be doing them kind of quietly on the front end, as well as your 12th house gets highlighted, where we can do a lot of really effective, wonderful work behind the scenes too. So yeah, I will say very motivating, very enlivening, pretty wonderful new moon for you to be experiencing. So it should treat you super well. I hope that it does. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Gemini, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your 10th house. This is the place of your public life, your public reputation. If you have a traditional career, this is going to be where that tends to show up. Your ambitions, the mark that you're wanting to make on the world. So this is going to create a moment of visibility, a seed of visibility. So when it comes to the projects that you're working on, when it comes to any authority figures that you're working with, clients, this is bringing a lot of focus to this area of your own personal visibility. The actions that you're taking, the quality of work that you're doing, it's very able to be seen. So it's helpful that this is going to be somewhat perfectionistic because you should be doing really quality work during this period of time. And so you should be able to create a sense of recognition around that. You may also find that you're just very passionate about what you're doing, that you're enjoying your work a bit more, that you're more excited about it, that you're wanting to bring maybe even a little bit more magic into it, or more of a sense of purpose and meaning into your working life or that which you do out in the world. This can even be bringing up a renewal of ambitions. But again, with Pisces in this place, you're going to want to have a sense of meaning, purpose behind that. So why is it that you're wanting to go after what you do? This isn't just a ladder climbing kind of a new moon. It's very passionate about what it wants to achieve or what it wants to accomplish, which is underlying those goals. So renewing your sense of ambition and then going all in on it. So refusing to do things in a half-assed manner, being really perfectionistic about the quality of your work. This is the last bit of Pisces here where we tend to go really all in on things. And this is, it's associated with the 10 of Cups and Tarot. So this notion of success and an idealistic sense of accomplishment or culmination. So it's a really wonderful new moon to have in your 10th house, bringing that up to its peak. So you may find that there's some new role that you're filling. This could speak to a promotion, certainly. This could speak to, again, a new project that you're going to be really known for, that's either kicking off or culminating around this point as well, that is really fueling your reputation, which is then supported by the ideals from which you work. So not just getting the job done, but getting the job done very well because you take a lot of pride in that and because you're able to follow through. You may also find that you're needing to make some big decisions about your future here. This is a new moon, so it's a kickoff point, but it's in these very late degrees of the zodiac. This is the second to the last degree of the entire zodiac before we move into Aries. So you may have this fork in the road moment where you're needing to decide, am I going to step off of this path and onto this one? And maybe even when I step off this path, is it going to be onto this one or another? You may have a major decision that you're needing to make around this time. And as far as that goes, this would really say, follow your passions, follow your heart, follow your intuition when it comes to that. Pay attention to the serendipities that surround you. Pay attention to the opportunities that are around you. If you're also feeling highly motivated to kick something off, a long-term project or a new way of going about your work, a new marketing campaign, maybe even adding in a completely new service to what it is that you're offering or something like this, this new moon is really going to help quite a bit with that. So I would be, at the very least, pursuing the planning stages of that. Think that through, process that, write it out, see how that winds up looking and see what kind of time frame are you able to do that on, etc. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Gemini. So I do hope that this new moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Cancer, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your 9th house. This is the house of your worldview, of the expansion of your horizons and life experience. This is a place of higher education and conceptual thinking, so your belief system beyond just your worldview as well, but also of travel and the expansion of your horizons also on a literal level. We're dealing with people of different cultures or from foreign lands or in foreign lands, etc. So for you, all of that which I said in the collective, if you listen to that about the belief system aspect of all of this, is going to be really highlighted for you very strongly. This is fundamentally about what do you believe about the world and your place in it and what's possible for you in it and what you should be reaching for and aiming for in terms of personal growth. So I would not be surprised if you are kicking off some kind of intentional like expansion project. So this could be on the learning front, taking courses, actively trying to learn about something or to study something to get really deeply into a subject, but also on a spiritual level, quite literally, like digging into some kind of a tradition or maybe going deep within to question yourself about what you believe and what your experience of life tells you about the world and the universe. This could be a renewal of faith as well, which would be absolutely wonderful. It's playing very nicely with the fact that you do have Jupiter transiting through your first house as well, which is also encouraging greater sense of belief in yourself and personal growth and expansion. And that's a very affirming Jupiter transiting through your first house, ruling a really wonderful new moon in your ninth, So I would expect some real wonderful, good feeling as well, breakthroughs in terms of your understanding of, or just at least the sense of understanding of the world. If you are in publishing at all, if you work in travel, if you work for a multinational, all of this is going to be really well supported as well. Specifically when it comes to publishing, this is your work being very well received, or your understanding of something and your ability to articulate it being well respected. Also, if you are a teacher, I'm surprised I didn't mention that. If you are a teacher or a student, this is also an indication of that going over very, very well for you, but also in a way that is quite impassioning. If you do have any travel planned for around this period of time, also expect for that to be intense in a good way, I would say. There is Mars there, which could indicate some complications, maybe delays with that Mercury retrograde, etc. But I would expect for any sort of travel experience to be really fertile with meaning for you, and like that it winds up infusing your sense of like the magic in your life, or a sense of deeper understanding of yourself through the experience of putting yourself outside of that comfort zone, right? But yeah, underpinning all of this is just a renewal of this kind of quest for personal truth, this quest to grow, to expand both outwardly in the world and in your experience of the world and your understanding of it, but also deeply within in terms of understanding yourself and getting really in touch with what's truly meaningful for you and what it is that you're going to do about that, like what choices then you're going to make about that, as the sun and the moon very quickly go into your 10th house in Aries there. So now that you know, what are you going to do about it? That's what the 10th house really says. But yeah, this looks absolutely beautiful to me as far as the new moon for you, Cancer, especially the fact that it is reinforcing this Jupiter, which is stationed in your first house. This should be fundamentally affirming to you. So I absolutely love to see it. And I really hope that it treats you well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Leo, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your 8th house. And this is the place of sharing with others, joint resources, particularly financial, but also emotional, psychological, where you kind of intertwine with other people. So this can be a moment of financial restructuring where you feel like you are cleaning the slate or trying to wipe the slate clean so that you're able to move forward more confidently, so that you're able to move forward less burdened. This could certainly have you very determined to pay off any sort of debts or to free yourself up also from any sense of obligation, especially emotional ties that feel stressful or burdensome. If you have a tendency to counsel people quite a bit or to share a lot of your energy, not just your finances, but your energetic resources, your time, this can have you wanting to approach that area of life a bit differently. And there may be a passionate moment here that brings up that issue so that you can look at it and intentionally plant some seeds to do that differently, to share differently. Is that being done in a way that is mutually beneficial? Do you feel like the connections that you have are reciprocal. You may feel a certain way about that during this new moon, but it should give you a lot of clarity about, again, like doing this in a new way with this new moon. So maybe you even feel like you've kind of shut yourself down at some point in the past in terms of opening up to people, being vulnerable with people. And so you felt the need to kind of close that off for a while, but this is something that you're wanting to open up to again. No matter whether this is needing to be a bit more protected or needing to be a bit more open, there's an opportunity here to approach that area of life differently. This could even speak to taking on a new loan or taking on some debt. I would definitely consider that, think that through before maybe you plant those new seeds. But that would be a pretty standard read on this, especially if you feel like you have wiped the slate clean in the past and there's something that you're wanting to take on around this time. You may also find that people come to you for support, for emotional support, that the emotions of people around you are a bit more intense and that they are more open to you. Now, that can play into needing to consider your boundaries a bit more, like we were talking about. But if you don't feel overburdened, this could just be an interesting time where the emotionality of your connections with people is heightened. Maybe you're even able to help people out quite a bit with some kind words or some emotional support, even some really sound counsel. So being really honest with others, helping them to sort things out by kind of cutting through some of that as well. So with Mars also in the mix here, you may be able to decipher what's going on with someone and help them out quite a bit by just kind of really putting your finger on it. But that radical honesty can also be about boundaries if that is something you struggle with. I mean, you do have Pisces, which is one of the most open signs in this area natally of your chart, especially if you have Leo rising, that does tend to allow people to come in and does encourage a lot of sharing. So you may need to be kind of putting your foot down even with people. Be really honest about what you need and from them and what you're willing to offer, what your expectations are. Now, this can also be an area that's kind of a blind spot to us most of the time. This is going to bring a lot of energy to that area. So it may be a bit more apparent, or you may feel this area of your life more. So some of our psychological fixations, especially with regard to other people, what we imagine their expectations to be of us, any fears or jealousy or envy or those kinds of emotions that relationships with other people can wind up bringing up. Am I good enough? Am I valuable enough? These kinds of things can wind up coming up. Maybe even fears around debts, fears about whether you'll be able to take care of yourself, whether you can really be independent, fears around vulnerability as well, like we kind of alluded to a bit earlier. This may bring that up. This is a weirdly passionate new moon in Pisces that's going on here, and it's bringing up a lot of stuff from the past. Maybe even things that were deep in the past that just recently we've been made more aware of by the conjunctions of Saturn and Neptune, which just went through this area. They got very, very, very close to each other in this sign just last year, and then they built up to their perfect conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries as they were pushing out of this sign for good. So this may have felt somewhat fraught in recent months, and so you may feel like there's a bit of a sore spot there of, man, I don't really want to deal with that anymore. But if these things do wind up coming up for you emotionally, it is to clear that out. It is to create a clean slate. So by facing any sort of fears in this area, you can hopefully release some of those fears as well. Now, also with this being a kind of hidden space that has to do with things outside of you, research also shows up here. You may love researching mysteries and things like that. Like I said, you, especially if you have Leo rising, have Pisces natally in your 8th house, so that may just be a fascination of yours, studying mysteries. And this is likely to bring that up as well. A real passion for digging into something, a passion for trying to understand something deeper. And you should be able to do that really effectively. I'll also finally say, like when it comes to intuition about what's going on with other people, you may feel like that is heightened as well. So that can help with the counseling aspect that I just mentioned, where you may feel very tuned into the fact that something's going on with someone and maybe be able to help people out, even with things that they're not focused on, that they're going through. Maybe someone doesn't tell you that they're going through something, but you know that they need a kind word and can just offer that. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Leo. So I do hope that this was helpful, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Virgo, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your seventh house. This is the place of your partnerships. So both romantically, in terms of close friends, in terms of colleagues and business partners, clients. So those kinds of partnerships, as well as any sort of agreements that you have with other people, how you relate to people. It's really the other side of a lot of situations from you that include other people, and then how you relate, how you tie all of that together. So for you, I think that this new moon is actually going to be following on in an interesting way from the Virgo full moon eclipse, the lunar eclipse that we just had, because that was in your first house. And these houses do tie together in a really special way in terms of how do we see ourselves and how do we present ourselves to the world? What do we view it as our role in the world? And then what are we meeting out in the world as well? And how do we interact with that? So there's a fundamental like social tie and dynamic between the first house and the seventh, first house being of yourself. So you've just had different aspects of yourself kind of come up to be shed or released to come into a fresher sense of who you are. And now we have this new moon, which is asking you to check in again on your beliefs about things in the world and so forth, what you're passionate about, what you believe, specifically about relationships and how you relate to other people. And it's kicking off a new way of approaching that, which is a bit more fierce, in your seventh house here. So there's some bigger question going on throughout this month about how you relate to others, just fundamentally. So if you do have any sort of people-pleasing tendencies, codependency, boundaries being complicated, this is a great month to just, not beat yourself up about it or anything like that, but just to check on all of those things. How do they make you feel? How do different people specifically make you feel in relationships, respecting that as all of the indication that you need as to whether that's a good connection for you or not, or whether you should be putting a lot of effort or energy into those kinds of connections or not. Just a big checkpoint here about how you relate to other people. So I would expect a lot of breakthroughs along the lines of how you relate to people, and specifically in some of your relationships. You may need to speak up in a way that's a bit outside of your comfort zone about what you're needing and what you're wanting. This could also speak to, because this is so late in the degrees, even though it's a new moon and that usually brings stuff in, you could wind up closing out some old connections, like releasing some relationships that just aren't working, especially if they've been connections where a lot of the effort to keep it together has been on your side. You might just be saying, this is dead weight. Like, I don't want to be putting my energy into that kind of thing anymore. Though the other side of that being, yes, new connections. And if there are new connections that are coming in, I do think that they're going to be a lot better aligned for you and much more passionate, much more of a sense of being on the same page in terms of your beliefs, wanting to go all in on some connections as well. That might be something you want to keep in check. If there's someone new that you're excited about, again, regardless of what kind of relationship this is, you might want to slow it down a little bit, especially if, again, it's come up recently into your mind of maybe I rush into things, or maybe I am a little bit codependent with people. Take your time. I do hope that does come through, though. That's always a really wonderful feeling when there's someone that you're excited about. And it does look to me like not only is that available to you during this time, but you may actually find that in groups of people. So if there is something here about your compassion or your kind of bleeding heart for other people, having Pisces in your seventh house naturally, being kind of ingratiating toward other people and wanting for them to be nurtured and so forth, and doing so on kind of a universal level. This being ruled by Jupiter, which is transiting through your 11th house. This is like groups of people and social causes and things like that. So you could have some really wonderful connections come through, which again might go a little bit overboard, the square to Venus in your 8th house, but in groups. So if you feel like your social life has been a bit of a drudge, or that you feel like there's not as much give and take or excitement in your connections, I would not be shy to go sign up for events and just interact with groups of people. You're likely to find some people that you really mesh with during this time. And with this radical honesty with others as well, that's in part this Mercury with the North Node out here in your seventh house as well. This Mercury is about to station, and it will call on you to really speak your heart with people. So it's not about trampling on people. It's not about, I'm special, right? I'm sure you've encountered with some people before, like, I'm special, and so you need to treat me better kind of way of approaching that. It's definitely not like that when it's in Pisces, but just saying like, look, this is how I treat people, and I expect to be treated along the same lines. And so being willing to kind of hold your own flag in that sense as well in some of your connections. Again, that may be something that you're not the most thrilled with doing all the time, but it's probably called for on some level here of just being a bit more honest about who you are and what you want in relationships. Again, all of that said, though, there is this potential to over idealize or to go like head over heels for some people, or to really build people up. Again, this doesn't just have to be romantic. This could be a new friend that you're really excited about, or it could be like a business partner that you're really excited about, you know, getting involved with, or a client that you're really building up. Just remembering that everyone is human, you know, and no one's perfect, ourselves included, those that we hype up included, etc. But yeah, other than all of that, I would just say relationships should be generally pretty passionate around this period of time. So I would be getting out there, connecting with those you love, wearing your heart on your sleeve a bit, respecting your own boundaries for sure, and enjoying this period of time because it looks pretty cool to me. So yeah, I hope that this new moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Libra, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your sixth house. And this is the place of your routines, the effort that you put into things, your working life, your coworkers, all the stuff basically that you have to do. A lot of our mundane lives show up in this place. In addition, acute health considerations also show up here. So to speak to that first, this can be releasing a kind of health pattern or a health related pattern. How much are you taking care of your day-to-day health on a daily basis? You know, are you taking care of your vitamins and minerals and any nutritional gaps? Do you have some kind of an exercise routine? If you haven't been following through on that, or if it just feels a little bit out of whack, maybe you've even been overdoing it, or maybe it feels like a real drudge at this point. This is a very passionate, very all-in kind of an alignment here. It's an unusually fervent kind of a Piscean new moon. There's no half measures here. So when it comes to a health regimen, what are you going to be able to go all in on? I would really recommend taking a focus on this around what's going to feel actually good and exciting. So can you bring some sense of fun to that? Can you make that more enjoyable so that you'll actually wind up following through? Because I think that, again, if there's any sort of half measures or if there's a major sense of boredom and dissatisfaction with the pattern, with the routine itself, that I think is where this could wind up falling short. So if you are trying to kick something off, really try and check in and make sure that it's not something that's just going to feel like a drag or that's just going to feel like work. But with that said, also when it comes to your daily routine, so your working life, etc., you may feel like you're somewhat impatient with that. You may feel like you are going between these extremes of, yeah, let's do it. Let's go all in on our work. Let's get a bunch of stuff done, like throughout the week leading up to this new moon, and then other days that are interspersed with just not wanting to do anything. And so also with that, check in on how passionate are you about what you're doing? Is there something that you're able to change around that to make that more comfortable, to make that more exciting? Are you able to, for instance, listen to music when you're doing your work, or take specific kinds of breaks as rewards? Like, what can you do in your daily life to make it more creative, to infuse it with a bit more magic? Maybe, for instance, you're able to kill two birds with one stone when it comes to the health regimen and then the daily routine as well. If you really love going for nature walks, but you haven't been doing that, kind of infusing that into your life, bringing a little bit more magic in, kicking off a health regimen that may actually wind up sticking around. There's a desire for more passion here. So anything that you can really infuse with a sense of passion and magic in your daily life is just going to help things to go a lot more smoothly. You may find that there are also new people that you're working with, new teams or new projects that you're working on. That can also shake things up and make things a little bit more exciting too. But look at that of, how can I do this differently? How can I do this in a way that's going to be less like long-term annoying or boring to me, right? So this is also what I'm speaking to about spiritualizing the mundane, infusing that magic in, giving a sense of meaning and purpose as well to what you're doing. So what's interesting with this is that it may come across in two different ways. This is a place of service as well. So where we offer our service to others. And if that's out of balance, again, because this is so all or nothing, it could wind up coming up in either way, of being really excited about giving or being of service. And maybe you can kind of spiritualize the mundane by bringing in some kind of volunteer or charity work or something like this, some spiritual practice that makes your day-to-day life feel somehow more deeply meaningful to you. But there may also be something here about, if you're feeling very drained, you may for sure have boundaries that are a bit of an issue here that you want to strengthen. And this can also help, especially with Mars there too. Mars is right here, not too far off from this new moon. This could point to being a bit more assertive about when you need to start reserving your energy and your efforts for your own interests as well. So if you tend to do a bunch of emotional labor for people, especially if it's not really recognized or if someone's kind of a drag, so even if they were to quote unquote do emotional labor for you, it wouldn't really fuel you, these kinds of things. That's something that would be wise to pay attention to during this time as well, so that you can kick off a different way of being of service to people that feels more balanced, or that feels less draining at least. But yeah, I think that is a lot of what I have for you, Libra, with this new moon. So I do hope it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Scorpio, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your 5th house. And this is a very lovely house. It has to do with your passions, your pleasures, your hobbies, that which you love. So your loved ones as well, children, friends, romantic partners, as well as your creativity and your sense of inspiration. So very lovely place to have this kind of an alignment, a new moon here, and to have your passions really stirred up, right? So this is likely to kind of present as a really excellent mood in a lot of different ways. So just being excited, being excitable, being willing to say yes to things, loving to connect with people, enjoying things generally quite a bit more. So I would expect for your sense of inspiration to be hyped up, to have the volume really turned up on that. Now, this can literally be creative avenues for that, right? So this house tends to be really strong for artists, but it doesn't just have to be that. It's very much about, what are your passions? What do you enjoy? So any sort of hobbies or interests that you have, this can be intellectual interests. For you, it may be very spiritual in particular because you have Pisces here, or it might be artistic because you have Pisces here, but it's going to get you, or like wisdom, old wisdom, things like this. It's going to get you really like hyped up and passionate about that. Wanting to start new projects along those lines, wanting to go all in on what you love. Now, when it comes to those that you love, there's a lot of really compassionate energy here where you may be giving of yourself quite a bit. And that's lovely. That's wonderful. That would be a really great way to kind of exercise this energy, especially if you have children, like going out, doing fun stuff with them that's unusual. Maybe going on a trip or going someplace that you guys haven't been before, especially with this new moon being ruled by Jupiter in Cancer, which is exalted. It's in a very lovely space there. And it's in the ninth house of unfamiliar places. So if you have been thinking about, taking a day trip or a weekend trip or something like that around this new moon, that should be really enjoyable. But it could also speak to, when it comes to your loved ones, renewal for them. So sometimes we can see these transits and stuff like that show up as like the people in our lives, like embodied within them. So this could also be someone around you that you really care about, that cares about you, that's inspiring you, or that's really encouraging you to go for it. If that's the case, I would listen to those people. If someone is really encouraging you, like to follow a passion of yours, or they're trying to build you up, or they're having some creative breakthrough and they're saying, hey, you can do it too, I'd be really tapping into that energy because it's absolutely wonderful. And speaking of that kind of energy, if there's a hobby you've thought about starting, I would do it. If there is some kind of creative instinct that you have that you've been thinking about maybe turning into a side hustle or something along those lines, I would aim for this new moon to kick something like that off. And you don't have to go all in at a given time, but if you were able to utilize this as basically an electional chart is what that's called, where you try to specifically pick a really good time to kick something off so that it winds up growing really well or going in the direction that you're wanting. This would be a wonderful chart to register a domain, pick a name for something, or register an account, anything along those lines. This new moon would be excellent to aim for. Even manifestation, write something down that you really want. Between this new moon and that Jupiter up in your ninth house, there's very little in terms of a ceiling that you should be watching out for. Write down what you really want. You might be surprised, even if you just write it down, put it in a drawer, forget about it. You'll probably run across it in a year and be like, oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, all of these different things wound up coming through for me. So this is also a place of personal self-expression and heart, so that which we are inspired to be in our life and in the lives of others. And because this is so uncompromising, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an ability during this time to really release yourself from any old inhibitions and just express yourself very openly and very authentically as well. So I would take advantage of those kinds of opportunities too. Don't be too shy to worry about, oh, what are other people going to think? It's so not about that in this moment. It's about enjoying yourself. So also give yourself that permission. Try not to overwork yourself. With Venus in your sixth house, you may be enjoying your work. With Saturn there, you're probably going to feel quite responsible about what you're doing, but try to give yourself a little bit of a break and do something that's purely for fun. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Scorpio. So this is going to be a really wonderful new moon for you. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Sagittarius, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your fourth house. And this is the place of your home and family, your past, your roots. So this is kicking off a new cycle when it comes to your home space itself. This could quite literally be a major desire to do some spring cleaning, to clear out any sort of old clutter or memories, items that are no longer useful, to clear the energy of the space by removing things, by redecorating, by starting a renewal project, some kind of renovation. This could even have you thinking about moving if you're wanting to live somewhere else, wanting to live somewhere even potentially quite far away, and starting that process, thinking that through. Now, there's likely to be a kind of emotionality or a passion behind this. This is a weirdly passionate Piscean new moon. So there's a certain excitement about it. There's a certain enthusiasm and emotionality to the energy that should be spurring you on. So if you are feeling frustrated with your home space, if you are feeling like you don't quite belong where you are, this is a real invitation to look at that deeply, pull up those roots, look at that issue from its core, and try to turn a new page, try to release what's not working for you. Again, maybe that's literally things and clutter and so forth. Maybe it's restoring a garden or something like this. But it could also be some of the emotional memories of where you live. The sense of belonging is likely to come up pretty strong here. So if that's something that you haven't looked at for a while, if you've been kind of going through the motions, if you've been dealing with a lot of family responsibilities, but not tapping into the like emotional calm and contentment aspect of that, this is going to bring you back to what really matters there. So you may see some major domestic or family breakthroughs also in terms of your connections with family members. So understanding, having conversations where you're going over things that have probably happened in the past. We do also have a Mercury retrograde that's ongoing during this period of time as well. Plus you have the nodal axis. This reinforces some of the themes of the past that are also coming up in part because of how late in Pisces this new moon is. It is bringing things up from the past in order to clear them out. So I wouldn't shy away from those conversations, especially if you have had them before and they haven't quite worked. This is a different kind of an energy. So you may actually be able to have some conversations or even just kind of have it out in a way that is more effective than it's been before, where people are maybe even a little bit less stubborn about where you stand, where they stand, etc. This can also have you doing this all pretty privately. So considering the familial patterns that go back sometime, looking at the dissatisfactions maybe with your parents and how they wound up approaching things, and maybe looking at, okay, well, I know my grandparents were like this to them as well, and maybe I can see how there's this pattern here. Maybe I want to make sure that I'm not bringing that pattern with me forward. So this is also a pretty powerful moment, especially with like Saturn and Neptune having just moved on from this space. If you have felt some level of frustration or disappointment or disillusionment with your recent familial past, maybe trying to look at that, not that you haven't at all, because you have Pisces here. I'm sure that you are pretty compassionate with your family, but maybe trying to loosen that up a little bit as not something that you kind of shy away from looking at, but that you look a little deeper into, because it should wind up presenting to you an opportunity to free yourself from that, to move on from that. This could also have you digging really deep into your emotional core, your emotional ideals. This to me is where our like sense of just internal security is. So this is the place that we kind of throw out into the world. This is the place that we're ultimately working from here. Our deepest ideals, our deepest sense of who we are comes from the fourth house. And so with this incredibly idealistic new moon that's coming through, this very passionate, emotional new moon here, this could be you really tapping into those ideals and being willing, especially with Mars here, to set aside a sense of comfort to really attack something, to really address something. Maybe this is a philosophical kind of basis that you work from, that you feel like you've been a bit out of alignment with. Again, we tend to go through the motions in life and forget about these things, but this new moon is going to be bringing your attention back to your own personal philosophical basis, and it'll be enlivening and impassioning that. But yeah, I think that is a lot of what I have for you, Sagittarius, with this new moon. So I do hope it treats you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Capricorn, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your third house. This is a place of your mind, of that which is around you, of the familiar environment. So your neighbors, your neighborhood, your community. Your siblings show up here, extended family shows up here, writing, everything to do with communication shows up here, your thoughts, especially like your kind of everyday opinion, thoughts, your assumptions about things, etc., based on just familiar experience. Schooling, learning shows up here as well. Movement, generally speaking. So there's going to be a lot of focus on these areas of kind of your everyday life and how that's all woven together. So if you do need to speak, if you need to communicate, if you need to share your ideas or your plans, if you need to write something, if like script something out, this is going to be really supportive, really helpful to that end. You're likely to have some really wonderful conversations about what's deeply meaningful to you. So not just small talk kind of stuff, but with this new moon being ruled by Jupiter in Cancer in your 7th house, this is speaking to connecting with people who are deep, who actually, think a little bit deeper and are willing to share that with you as well, and are also quite affirming to you and your beliefs and your ideas, your plans, etc. So getting on the same page with different people should be pretty easy during this time and also pretty exciting. Now, there may be a little bit of drama here. The passions are running high, so sometimes if you have a lot of people who are quite passionate and uncompromising, you can wind up kind of running into each other. So that is something I would watch out for a little bit, is being very uncompromising in your ideas. If you want to get someone else on board, there does need to be a little bit of compromise there. Hopefully the trine from Mars in your 3rd to Jupiter in your 3rd is going to open up that door. It's probably a little bit less likely with family. There may be a bit of really seeing things differently from some family members, but that's just because everyone is really passionate about doing something. So hopefully there can be a breakthrough there where, because everyone cares about something, maybe this is a plan or an event. Maybe it's something that is like policy within your community. Maybe it's about a policy within your workplace even. Hopefully everyone can have their say, because it would look to me like everyone kind of cares quite a bit. And you should be able to, if you've been wanting to communicate some cool idea or plan or something like that and get people on board, but you haven't known whether people would care, this would be a great time to get people to care about your ideas and to get them to kind of affirm those ideas as well. So if there's something you've been holding on to in terms of communication, I would share that during this time, because you're likely to get a lot of traction. Also, any sort of public speaking should go over very well. There's just, this Jupiter is very inclined to affirm your voice, basically, throughout this period of time. And this is out in the place of other people. So that's why I keep really reinforcing, speak your minds, connect with people, communicate, because it's likely to go over a lot better than usual during this time. And also just really speaking from the heart. The deeper that your words are, the more reception I think that you're going to get as well. Now, this is also speaking to a pivot, a change in pace, a lot of movement, a lot of correspondence. So you may find that you were inundated with correspondence. It's really difficult to get to zero inbox, right? Asking for the patience of people with that. Again, that's another way that you're likely to get what you're looking for. People are likely to be very understanding if you are getting overwhelmed by the amount of communications that are coming in, the amount of plans, the amount of events. Just be honest, speak up about what you're needing from people. If you need to delegate, if you need to ask for help with something, I would not be shy to do that as well, because there's likely to just be a lot going on during this period of time, and not just a lot going on, but new things kicking off too. So even things that may be coming into the familiar environment, but that you're not quite familiar with yet. So that takes a little bit more time. But this all looks really good to me. If you were a writer, I would be setting aside time to write, because you're likely to be filled with a lot of inspiration during this time too. And it's likely to be able to come through you in a form that would get really excellent reception from the outside as well, even if you're not publishing quite yet. Additionally, I will say transit, going different places, all of the in-betweens, being out in your community, going to the market, going to the park, etc. So all these familiar places and stuff. You do have a Mercury that's slowing down here. You've got a Mars here too. So yes, there could be little delays in transit, delays in communication, little tech breakdowns and things like that for sure. But what I will say as well is that you're likely to be happy that that happened for some reason or another. So for instance, like these little divine interruptions could also wind up presenting themselves to you through your environment. So I would try and be as open to that as possible and not let that stop you from going out and doing things and connecting and so forth. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn. So I do hope that this new moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Aquarius, we have the new moon in Pisces taking place in your second house. This is the place of your personal resources. So your finances, income shows up here, as well as your possessions, your skills, all that which you bring to the table. And this is also a place of self-reliance and independence. So this is going to be bringing a financial focus to you. So this can be creating a new budget that works for you going forward rather than based on previous considerations. There's a major like wrapping things up and releasing what has been aspect to this new moon. And there's a lot of passion, a lot of motivation behind it. So if you've been wanting to be more financially independent, if you've been wanting to be more self-reliant, this is offering an opportunity to kickstart that. So it would be a really great time to look at your budgets, possibly even to sell some things if there's possessions that you have that you don't feel are really going to serve you going forward, releasing those. This can also speak to financial breakthroughs. If you've been waiting on a raise, this can be information finally coming through about that. We do still have Mercury retrograde, so it might take a little bit longer to be fully formalized, but this could be a major breakthrough moment in that process as well, especially with regard to like recognition of what it is that you're bringing to the table. Now, with this in Pisces as well, this is bringing your attention back to the non-material values that you have, your ideals, your values, but also your sense of optimism and idealism, generally speaking, about your financial life, your standing, your independence. So trying to merge those together, either again through a greater sense of independence and like self-reliance and so forth, or through trying to find ways to bring in finances or bring in resources that feel more aligned with your values. You may even find when it comes to like your energetic resources that there's something that's calling on you to contribute as well. So volunteer work, charity, giving back, giving of yourself as well. Additionally, if you have struggled at all with scarcity mindset or anxiety around finances, this also offers an opportunity to close that out, to move forward, to move on from that. So again, that's probably going to wind up coming back to what are the numbers, like rebudgeting in a way that makes you feel more comfortable, that makes you feel more secure and more solvent going forward. The one thing that I would watch for about this is because it's such an extra passionate, kind of all or nothing sort of new moon that we have here in this last decan of Pisces, which can really wind up granting a lot of wishes, but can also be intensely idealistic. This could look like, for instance, getting a bonus and then spending it all, or getting a tax return and spending the whole thing or giving the whole thing to charity or something like this. So when it comes to those extremes, they're kind of inherent to this new moon. So if you find yourself spending in an uncharacteristic way, that may be wise to watch out for, or really upping and upping and upping the ante when it comes to what you're giving to others as well. As someone with a lot of Pisces in my chart, I tend to do that. That might be something that you identify with as well, is like when you're trying to decide an amount to give, kind of one-upping yourself repeatedly until you wind up settling on a number that you wind up giving. This might be a good moment to maybe tamp that down a little bit, maybe give it some time, think about that, maybe wait a bit to the other side of this new moon before you wind up pulling the trigger on that. But it will feel good. It's going to feel probably quite satisfying to give of yourself and your resources during this time. So it should be pretty interesting. Also, just recognition, not just from the outside, though there's that aspect of this as well. Jupiter's in your 6th house, so like your contributions are definitely being recognized around this time, but also a personal recognition of your value, coming back to that, feeling more confident in that with this new moon as well. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you with this new moon, Aquarius. So I do hope it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Pisces, we have this new moon in Pisces taking place in your first house. So this is all about you and a sense of personal reinvention. This is probably going to run a lot deeper for you when it comes to who you are, what your beliefs are, what motivates you, what you're going after, what you feel like your role is in the world, what you feel like your calling is, what your personal goals are. So this is going to go pretty deep here. And again, this is a very, if you listened to the collective, which I would kind of recommend, because a lot of that is going to be, I think, quite relevant for you. When it comes to what you're really passionate about, what do you really believe in? What is that, to put it in stark terms, what is that hill that you are willing to die on, right? What is it that you're really willing to make personal sacrifices for out of a sense of passion for that or belief in that? Or desire to see that through, right? So if this is in terms of personal goals, what do you really, really want to do? Who do you really want to be? Who do you really want to see yourself as and be able to feel like you are honestly projecting yourself as, and how you get there? So rooting that really deep, looking into that, digging into that, and then allowing for that energy to kind of flow through. Try then to make some plans around that. Try to put one foot in front of the other when it comes to that. This is truly about like a fundamental personal reinvention of yourself, your goals, and your life during this time. This is such like all or nothing Pisces energy that's coming through with this alignment. I have like a bunch of Pisces stuff in my chart, so I'm definitely looking forward to this one personally. This is also definitely going to be working on your own personal passions and excitement for things. So when it comes to just your mood, you should feel like that is really lifted up quite a bit, especially if the lunar eclipse in Virgo was a little bit uncomfortable for you. This should be getting you back to feeling like yourself and feeling like you're able to really connect with what's meaningful to you, to go out there in the world and to pursue that. This is also so uncompromising. The first house is where you express yourself. So that's what I was saying, like, who do you feel like you can kind of honestly project yourself as? This is about being really uncompromising in that, regardless of whether you want to fake it till you make it or just be 100% uncompromisingly yourself, all flaws included, and own them and flaunt them and be happy about them, regardless of which way you want to come at this, because this is fundamentally personal for you. This is about expressing that outwardly, owning that. What feels truly right for you? Don't be shy to go all in on that because you're likely to get some really good results. This is pinging Jupiter, which is the ruler of your Pisces placements. And it's a very fortunate, it's considered the greater benefic, so the greater good doer or beneficial planet. It currently is in its own exaltation in Cancer. So it is very capable of helping us out, and it is helping all of us out with our Pisces placements. But it's also like connecting into our passions and our action. Additionally, with this Jupiter in the fifth house, this is another place of your spirit, your inspiration, what you love, what your passions are, who you love, a sense of personal meaning and enjoyment and pleasure. So that Jupiter is really reinforcing what you love. And this new moon is then coming through and connecting you much more deeply to that and saying, go after that. This is what life is all about, right? So there's a real permission slip here to be yourself and to go after what you want and what you love. Now, with Mercury in the mix here and just knowing Pisces for what it is, there may be a little bit of, getting tired at times. This is very passionate, but Pisces can definitely get a bit burnt out on that kind of thing. So I wouldn't be shy to get some rest. This isn't so much about having to like hit the gas pedal all the time. This is about coming into a new version of yourself that isn't afraid to hit the gas when it desires to. So if you need to get some extra rest during this time, I wouldn't be super shy about that. But in those moments where you are really called to action, I think you might surprise yourself as well. Being really courageous, being willing to be more extroverted, more outgoing, to put yourself kind of more out on a limb during this time. for something that you believe in, for something that is really meaningful for you, even when it comes to your personal goals. Setting that bar high, like shooting for the stars, being really honest with yourself about what you truly want and not imposing limits before you even start trying, right? So really just going all in on those personal goals as well and being really courageous about that. But yeah, I think that this is going to feel like a big personal refresh, you know, and a strong affirmation of self. And if you're able to spread that goodwill, those good vibes around, I think that that's also going to create a really nice feedback loop as well. So yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces. I do hope this new moon treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me.